North has better weather.
This tropical update is sponsored by the Home Depot, where low prices are just the beginning. Well, let's take a look. We have our first tropical storm of the season, and there we go. Arthur is, of course, the first name on the list, and it is also our first storm, just named moments ago. It is centered at 31.8 north, 78.9 west, and that are the coordinates as of 11 p.m. That puts the center about 100 miles southeast of Charleston, South Carolina, and winds, maximum sustained winds, 40 miles per hour, moving to the north at 9 miles per hour. And again, it is the first tropical storm of the season, just named moments ago. Let's see what else is going on here. And of course, if we can head back to AWG, the tropical storm watches and warnings remain in effect here. We have tropical storm warnings in effect from Edisto Beach northward to Cape Lookout here. And then north of there to the Virginia border, we have a tropical storm watches in effect. So again, it has been upgraded to a tropical storm, so certainly a serious situation here. Not only going to have the windy conditions, winds over 40 miles per hour, but you will also have a great deal of rain with this as well. Let's take a look at our satellite view, and here's what we see. Of course, the cloud cover already making its way on into South Carolina, southeastern North Carolina. Now, the center of circulation a little bit farther to the south of the big mass of clouds here. But we have seen not only the cloud cover, but also the rain making its way on into South Carolina. It's only going to get worse as well before it gets better. As we can see, the rain already here across Myrtle Beach getting in on the wet weather now. Eventually, we will see that activity moving on into perhaps Wilmington and much of eastern North Carolina. We could be talking about 5 inches or more of rain falling in these areas, and that's certainly enough to cause some real problems here with perhaps flooding problems when we see that kind of rain. Again, just to remind you that it has been upgraded to a tropical storm, or the first of the season tropical storm, Arthur. Another perspective on our rainfall, and you can see already, of course, moving here into South Carolina. Now back to the south offshore, you can see the yellows and the oranges. That indicates where some of the heavier rain is, and that is yet to make its way on shore, but it is certainly going to occur. You can see already just now making its way into South Carolina. And again, South Carolina, North Carolina, you too are going to be getting in on some of the active weather. Other things going on in the tropics, well, pretty quick.
Forecast Center.
The first tropical storm of the Atlantic season has formed. It is Tropical Storm Arthur, and it is slowly moving north off the South Carolina coast. Good evening, I'm Jeff Morrow in the Weather Channel Forecast Center. We've been tracking this tropical depression, now tropical storm, for the better part of a day or so now, and it has now been upgraded by the Hurricane Center to a tropical storm. 31.8 north, 78.9 west as of the brand new 11 p.m. advisory that centers Arthur about 100 miles southeast of Charleston in South Carolina. Winds a minimal tropical storm at this point at only 40 miles per hour. It is moving north at 9, so its forward motion has slowed a bit. Earlier it was up to about 12 miles an hour, but it is slowing down just a bit, which will keep the center out over water just a little bit longer, which will give it the opportunity to perhaps strengthen just a little bit more. Pressure, 29.65 inches of mercury, or 1,004 millibars. That reported to us by the Hurricane Hunter aircraft. There are tropical storm warnings out from Edisto Beach all the way up to Cape Lookout, and from there all the way up to the North Carolina-Virginia border, tropical storm watches. Now, a tropical storm warning means tropical storm force conditions can be expected within the next 24 hours. In this case, we think it will be sooner than that along the northeast South Carolina coast and the southeastern coastal areas of North Carolina. Satellite shot shows a big ball of thunderstorms, of convection as we call it, but it is mainly north of where the center of circulation is. On the last frame here, the center of circulation would be about right in there, which would put it south of the main area of thunderstorms. Now, if you're looking for more development in a tropical system, you would have to see that center of circulation be encompassed by all the thunderstorms. We are not seeing that. So this system still is undergoing perhaps a little bit of southerly wind shear, blowing these thunderstorms off just to one side. It's also steering this whole system generally in a northerly direction. On this particular path, that would bring the center right up over just east of Myrtle Beach, perhaps, and on over toward the Wilmington area. A little bit too early to call exactly where this system will be headed inland, but that looks to be about the best guess at this point. Probably somewhere from Myrtle Beach right on up here to about Camp Lejeune, somewhere in that area is the most likely area that Tropical Storm Arthur will be moving onshore. Now, the main threat from Arthur will not be the winds, we don't think, even though the surf will be coming up. By the way, high tide has just been reached along many of these coastal areas. Low tide will be overnight tonight, and then the high tide again about 9 to 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. But we don't think there'll be much in the way of any coastal flooding. What we do think is a lot of this rain, which is spiraling around this system, will be moving inland and starting to come on shore, as you can see it is doing now. That could cause some localized flooding anywhere from about Georgetown, South Carolina, particularly up over the Myrtle Beach area and on up toward Wilmington. Wilmington about right in here, Myrtle Beach about right in here. You can see Myrtle Beach already getting some rain as some of the moisture is starting to spiral around the system and is starting to move on shore. The actual center of the circulation, we think, is probably right down here on the bottom of the screen, and it is generally moving off toward the north. Landfall we expect in about 12 hours, maybe a little bit longer. If this system slows down a little bit more, we will know more as the hurricane hunters continue to report back to us and give us the latest information, and we get the latest updates from the National Hurricane Center. We, of course, will pass those along to you. Keep it tuned here to the Weather Channel.
It's way into the mid-Atlantic states. That's kind of iffy, but that's the forecast, and that should help to push Arthur right out to sea, so we're not looking for any lingering effects with Arthur. So it looks like a little shot of rain and wind right along the immediate coast of North Carolina today. Some rip currents, bad for you beachgoers, but it looks like Arthur will not be a major problem, but the threat is for some flash flooding upstate, northeastern South Carolina there, and then right along the immediate coast of North Carolina. Then it should move out to sea. So if Arthur behaves, that's what should happen. So just a little pain in the neck for you vacationers in eastern North Carolina and in northeastern South Carolina. Now let's talk about some more serious problems, some flash flooding like what's been occurring. Okay, let's give you the particulars now on the storm and show you where the center of circulation is and the pressure. And here's the latest in from the Hurricane Center. Hurricane hunters have been investigating, and there you can see the center of circulation about 80 miles off to the south-southwest of Wilmington, North Carolina. Top winds only about 40 miles an hour. It's a minimal tropical storm. It's moving up towards the north at about 10 miles an hour. And it is forecast to turn more off towards the northeast or east-northeast. So it looks like it'll be pretty much paralleling or just skimming the coast of North Carolina today. And with that, tropical storm warnings are in effect from Cape Romaine, South Carolina to the border of North Carolina and Virginia. And those of you who live or are visiting these areas should be prepared for a squally day. Look for heavy downpours of rain and some gusty winds, and winds that could gust up to 40 miles an hour or so. Visible satellite picture shows us the center of circulation down in through here, and checking on the coastal observations is more like northeasterly and east-northeasterly winds, so that kind of tells us the storm probably will be turning more towards the northeast as the day does wear on. There's still the potential for some very heavy rains with the storm. We have seen heavy rains overnight and early this morning in northeast South Carolina. Estimates about 3 to 5 inches of rain there. So it looks like the main threat from this storm will be the heavy rains that'll be moving up the coast of the Carolinas. And those of you who are headed off to the beaches today, please be very cautious because there could be some dangerous rip currents developing. So even though it's kind of quiet now, things
open waters. It is not a threat to the U.S. anymore, and it is not even a threat to Bermuda. However, it may be a threat to some ship interests. So we'll keep that in mind for you. It's actually forecast to become extratropical or not even be a tropical system in the next 24 to 48 hours. Elsewhere on Tropical Depression Arthur, hot off the presses, this says 11 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. You know what? You're getting it a little bit early. How about that? What a bargain. Centered about 240 miles south of Nantucket, Massachusetts. Winds 35 miles per hour, moving east-northeast at 18 miles per hour. The official forecast calls for it to continue to move away from the lower 48. It is not expected to affect us in any way anymore, and it's not expected to affect Bermuda. Might be an effect on some shipping interest, though, so we are still covering it for you. It is expected to continue to weaken, though, and actually become extratropical, so we're probably not going to have to worry about it much longer. But that's what things look like with Tropical Depression Arthur. You might remember yesterday as Tropical Storm Arthur skirted along the outer banks of North Carolina. We had some reports of wind gusts around 48 miles per hour around the Frying Pan Shoals. And we also had reports of some squally weather, some showers and thunder showers with the bands surrounding the center of circulation. Well, as we expand on out, we can show you that nothing really happening here in the Gulf of Mexico or the southwestern Caribbean. We do, however, have two areas of concern, two tropical waves that we're watching. One affecting the islands and the other one just a little farther towards the east. Little flare-up of convection or
depression, and it continues to move out of our hair, which we're happy to report. If you're plodding along at home, a lot of folks I know keep a plot going of the hurricane season throughout the year. Well, the center right now is 37.9 north, 66.1 west, which puts it about 310 miles to the southeast of Nantucket. And it's moving on an east-northeasterly track, actually pretty quick, the east-northeast at 22 miles an hour. The winds are at 35 miles an hour, and it will continue to head out of the picture. And the good news is, it really is of no threat to any U.S. landmass, or Bermuda for that matter. So if you have plans to travel to Bermuda, this is not going to impact you whatsoever, and it will continue to barrel on eastward and is expected to become extratropical as we head on through the evening hours, which means it loses a lot of its really tropical characteristics. It's not a warm system anymore. It's more passing over the colder waters. A lot of tropical systems, of course, need the warm water to keep their act together, and this will become a little more extratropical, something like we'd see in the central part of the United States.
Spots here. We do have upper-level low pressure here. Again, at this point, nothing looking too terribly organized, and we've got some waves that are moving on westward, but really, well, a little too early in the season to look for any real...
This is the latest, or what's left of Arthur, I guess. The latest imagery showing Arthur heading out to sea, big time, heading into probably Europe, possibly anyway. The model is showing that moisture and low pressure heading in. Now, it is a low pressure, but it's extratropical, which means it's a non-tropical low, and so nothing to worry about. Meanwhile, we've got also a low pressure right here in the Gulf of Mexico. You can see the circulation. That's also non-tropical, though, so we're not expecting any rapid development or anything like that, but it's something we'll keep an eye on if it were to become tropical, but that would take a lot of time if it ever did. So not a